Hi, this is Cody with Mastering Light. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about working from your plein air or outdoor sketches and turning that into a little bit larger studio painting. And why would we want to do that? Well, a lot of times when you're painting outdoors, it's kind of a quick reaction. You know, it's your initial response to the scene, and while that's often interesting and fresh and very direct, you may get back to the studio and think, well, you know, I've got a little more I want to say about this. And that's where the studio painting comes in. You can take your outdoor sketch and try to make something a little more sophisticated, a little more thoughtful. And there are a lot of techniques and details that you can use in the studio that you just don't have time for outdoors. So it's often a really fun and interesting exercise. It helps you grow as an artist. And so let's take a look at some examples of study to studio. Here's a shot of my studio in Jerome, Arizona, where I sold my work for 23 years. And you can see on the easel that I've got my plein air sketch clamped above the studio painting. The plein air sketch was a 9 by 12. I believe the studio painting was an 18 by 24. So it's about 4 times larger than the outdoor sketch. And the outdoor sketch took me roughly about 2 hours. And I spent a couple of days on this studio piece. And here's a little better shot of the plein air piece. It wasn't quite this red, but this gives you an idea. And here's the larger studio painting, and you can see a lot more detail and a lot more refinement going on here. So when we go from plein air to studio, you know, it's not just to make a larger copy of your original painting. You want to be doing a larger version because you have more to say, because you've got some refinement in your idea. And in this photo you can see, you know, part of it was I wanted to improve the drawing. First of all, you know, when you're working outdoors, you're working kind of quickly, at least I was, and so in the studio, I have time to draw a little better, design the shapes a little better, think through the transitions between the rocks and the trees and the river, and just generally improve on my design. And that's the main thing. And then, of course, having a larger canvas means you have more space to do some better brushwork, you know, some interesting things with the paint. Like I added a more cloudy sky. I put a lot more color variation in the rocks themselves. The trees are also completely redesigned for more color, and on down through the painting, everything just has better design, better color, better brushwork. And so it's a more dynamic painting, which is the whole point. So now let's look at how I started this studio piece while studying the outdoor sketch, using it for design clues, but really redesigning almost everything. So in the first step was I took my white canvas and I did a light tone. I believe I used burnt sienna here. And I just kind of washed it over the surface and then wiped it back off with a paper towel for the most part, so that it's just kind of a little bit of a wash with not too much paint there. And then I drew the major shapes with a small brush, paying attention to proportion, perspective, and placement of the focal point within the canvas. And that's one of the luxuries we have in the studio, to really design better shapes and better connections. Here I've blocked in the sky, and as I often do, not always, but I often like to work sort of from background to foreground. It just aids in your overlapping forms and how you handle those edges. But the main thing here was just to get the mood of the sky, this kind of stormy sky that's sort of breaking on the horizon. We've got a little bit of blue sky in the distance, and that's the feeling I wanted, because the light that's hitting these cliffs, these rocks, are it's kind of like the sun has gotten under the clouds right at the end of the day, and it's just lighting up those walls. So, I invented this sky completely from imagination, but it had to support the basic light effect that I was after. And you can see that here in the rocks, that now the sky and the light on those walls makes sense. Now with the hard part done, the focal point done, you can see all the interesting brushwork that I created, and a lot of that is just invented. Again, I paint a lot on feeling, but I try to make it organic, so it's not too contrived. It's still believable. It's still within the realm of possibility, of reality. But I like to have fun with color, as you'll see as we progress now into the trees. Here in the finished painting, you can see that I've really mixed it up in the trees. I've made some kind of reddish trees, some ochre colored trees, some greens. I've given it a little variety, mixed them up a little bit, moved them around, because I felt like I liked the color in the rock walls, but I needed a little bit of color in that middle distance to counterbalance that, so it wouldn't be too overwhelming. By contrast, even though it's in the foreground, I chose to keep the water fairly simple. I think every painting kind of needs a calm area to counterbalance the busier areas. And there's a lot going on in the middle distance between the trees and the rocks. So having a little bit of calmness in the water, I think, just helps make it a stronger design. A lot of my students, I always tell them, beware of overdeveloping your backgrounds. That's a common beginner mistake. But sometimes you can overdevelop the foreground, and this is a good example of, thinking about design first and the actual scene second. We don't have to be human Xerox machines. We want to redesign for our own artistic taste. So in this case, just a small couple of trees on the left side as well to kind of break the horizontal lines, to provide a visual stop, if you will, on the left side. Keep your eye from running out that side of the canvas. But anyway, you can see a lot more detail, thoughtful brushwork, greater variety of edges, greater variety of color, better drawing, better design, and the end result is, I think, a much better, more sophisticated painting. And that is really the purpose of doing a larger version in the studio. I hope you found this video useful. Please hit the like button if you did. Maybe subscribe as well. And if you'd like to learn more, I teach my Mastering Light course twice a year. You can learn more about that at codydelong.com/masterclass. Until next time, happy painting.